Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00 and episode 3 of Gold vs Silver, where we compare and contrast the laws from the Gold timeline, or the games and books, and the lore from the Silver timeline, or the TV series, and see where it took inspiration, where it didn't, where it is the same, and where it differs. This week's going to be pretty lore heavy, because we've got to get through today's episode 3, and then episode 4 releases tomorrow, which I do plan on covering on the same day. And then on Thursday you'll receive a lore and theory, and Friday, a most detailed breakdown. Oh, and don't think you've got rid of me this weekend either. I've got a little something planned then as well. Nevertheless, let's get on with this. The opening scene finds a young McKee and a friend on planet Oban, which appears to be something like an industrial waste colony. Again, McKee isn't known to the Gold timeline, so there isn't much to take away from these scenes aside from the device that the elite is holding upon reaching the planet. It is a luminary. In the Gold timeline, a luminary is a Forerunner device that can find locations of other important Forerunner artifacts. The Covenant used them extensively to locate and retrieve Forerunner devices and facilities. However, the luminaries also detect reclaimers. During the first contact at the colony Harvest, the Covenant were drawn to the planet and found it covered in what they thought were Forerunner relics. The relics were in fact the humans on the planet. They had unfortunately mistranslated the Forerunner symbol for reclaimer as reclamation. When this mistake was discovered by the Prophets with the help of the fragment of mendicant bias at the core of the Forerunner keyship in the centre of High Charity, the Prophets realised that their entire religion was based upon a mistaken translation and a lie. Their religion being fundamentally built around the idea that the Forerunners achieved godhood by activating the rings, yet the Reclaimers are the inheritors and quote-unquote children of the Forerunners, showing that the rings and the Forerunners were not what the Covenant thought they were. From that moment onwards, the lie was hidden, the genocide of humanity began, all to continue to mask their mistakes, and luminaries were no longer widely used, in case others discovered the truth. In the Silver timeline, the luminary correctly identifies McKee as a reclaimer, and pious curiosity spared her life, resulting in her being brought to the Prophets and becoming the Blessed One. The scenes at High Command give Miranda her long-desired shot at a more prominent role in the UNSC, with Parangoski revealing she wants to rely on Halsey significantly less going forward, telegraphing her resentment for Halsey manipulating her in front of the board, and foreshadowing a plan to push Halsey out, very much in line with the war criminal Halsey we've seen in recent games. Following this, we join Halsey as they prepare her flash clone for cognitive impression modelling. In the Gold timeline, Halsey made illegal flash clones of herself. However, she altered the flash clones to favour brain development over practically everything else, resulting in what appeared to be rather overdeveloped fetuses, unpleasant and uncomfortable to imagine indeed. She was also working on a means of memory transfer between brains by mapping the ion density in a person's neural pathways and replicating them in a blank brain. Her understanding that the experiences, knowledge, memory and emotion inform neural structures and neural plasticity, and thus result in a strikingly different individual, even if they are literally a clone. And this ultimately driving forward her desire for a creation of a one-to-one version of herself, cognitively speaking, so she could make, in her way of thinking, the best AI core matrix possible. All AIs to this point had been created using donor brains from recently deceased people. The brain was then impression modelled, which passes high-frequency electric fields through the brain's neural pathways and mapping them one-to-one in an AI crystalline data processing unit. The process destroys the original tissue, which is why AIs could only be made from recently deceased donors. But it came with its own limitations. Halsey's intention was to create an AI from a living human brain, and no less a living brain with all the memories, experiences, knowledge and complexities expected from a living human. And she saw no brain better suited to that task than her own. The clone would then be readied for the cognitive impression modelling process in a sedated state and then subjected to the process, rendering a one-to-one clone of Halsey's brain, with all her memories and knowledge as an AI core matrix that would then go through the process of becoming self-aware and birthing an AI. She made 7 clones. Cortana was made from one, an experimental AI was made with another but was ultimately deemed a failure. Cortana's older sister, Kalmia, was made from yet another, and finally the weapon in Halo Infinite was made from another one most recently, potentially leaving her with 3 of her own brains left. In the Silver timeline, the clone is a fully formed and developed adult human, Perfect one-to-one clones like this do not have very long lives. Defects introduced into their genetics due to the accelerated cloning and growth processes cause fatal cascade degradations resulting in the death of the clones. So this clone has to be kept inactive for as long as possible until the moment they are needed. The conversation that happens between Halsey and her clone clearly indicate the clone is fully aware and sentient. For all intents and purposes, they are a completely independent, living, breathing, feeling human being. She also demonstrates memory and knowledge of actions taken by Halsey to obtain tissue samples for the sakes of cloning, but nothing thereafter, and cannot separate the memory of performing those actions and the fact that those memories aren't, technically speaking, her own. The clone even makes it abundantly clear that from her perspective she doesn't feel like a clone or the product of the works carried out by Halsey, but does in fact feel like she is Halsey, possessing all of the knowledge and memory of the original Halsey up to the moment she copied her memories. Everything thereafter obviously would not have been transferred, so any knowledge learned by the real Halsey since wouldn't be known to her clone. The more I ponder on the realities of this scene, the more unsettling they become. Clone or not, this person is a living person, completely aware, capable of love, fear, creativity, abstract thinking, able to lead a productive life. They are a person. And yet, Halsey converses with the clone, indeed they converse with each other, knowing full well the intention to kill her and harvest her for her neural pathways. No matter what way you look at it, Halsey effectively created a human being, modelled after herself, that she plans to murder in a brutal scientific experiment. Next we have the procedure itself happening in tandem with John's upgrade. In the Gold timeline, Chief was given an upgrade to his Spartan neural interface. The S1E3 is an advanced brain-computer interface device built into the midbrain with a surface access port at the base of the skull. When wearing Mjolnir, the suit interfaces with the brain of the wearer directly via this port. The user can then control functions of the suit by merely thinking about it. HUD optical zoom can be activated by squinting, communications activated by concentrating on the individual you wish to talk to, armor diagnostics activated by thinking about them. Even movement becomes secondary to the body, with Mjolnir taking the motor cortex neural impulses for movement from the brain and translating them to digital signal and processing them into movement of the suit before the impulses have even exited the skull. A brief surgery was performed in 2552 to upgrade Chief's S1E3 to include the ability to receive an AI data chip. He then suited up with a new version of Mjolnir Mark V and was united with Cortana, who existed both within Mjolnir's data processing layer and Chief's brain. She can't create neural impulses and doesn't have control of the suit or John, but exists between the two as a mediary device to increase the efficiency of the connection between Chief and his suit and provide better battlefield diagnostics, espionage, and field intelligence. In the Silver timeline, there appears to be no external port for the S1E3, and the AI upgrade is achieved by literally injecting a crystalline spark material that contains Cortana directly into his brain. The process is unpleasant for Chief and is fatal to the clone. Quan's story on the rubble continues to be a desire to return to Madrigal to take back control from Vincia. Again, this story is not known to the Gold timeline but becomes more significant in later episodes. Chief meeting Cortana for the first time was shaky in both the Gold and Silver timeline. In the Gold timeline, Chief was immediately deployed onto a training mission to test their symbiosis. Cortana attempted to talk to Chief to establish a plan and began overanalyzing battlefield information. Chief shut her down when trying to establish a plan by interrupting her and telling her he was going to finish counting first, then achieve the mission, and cut her off entirely when she attempted to analyse the sound of an assault rifle's bolt being cycled because he already recognised it. She remained silent for a while after this until he called upon her. In the Silver timeline, Chief is dismissive of her, interrupts her and cuts her off, more or less a mirror of his initial behaviours in the Gold timeline, just under a different situation. Part of the bonding for Chief and Cortana in the Gold timeline was fighting together against ODSTs who were armed with live ammunition and orders to kill from Colonel Ackerson. This first training mission was what they needed to bond. Although this doesn't appear to have happened in the Silver timeline, there is a mission that they do bond over, but it happens during the finale, so for now we'll leave that on the back burner. McKee's attempt at finding information on the location of Madrigal plays out as expected. UNSC ships and personnel are bound by the Cole Protocol to purge any data on the locations of human colonies if the ship is under threat of capture or boarding. The captain manages to activate the Cole Protocol before McKee captures him and kills him, denying her any information regarding the location of other human colonies. Also, there is a series of scenes where Chief observes Marines playing games, and then it cuts to Silver Team and Kai is playing a memory game and Vanek and Riz are playing 3D chess. Chief seeing other people play and he doesn't necessarily understand the context. Others play while he continues to work. This is addressed shortly. There's still not much to say on Quan, but we'll get there. Chief's next actions are interesting. He is looking for information regarding his visions when he's in contact with the artifact. He knows full well that the artifact carries with it a darkness. If Reth's assertions were to be believed, it is part of a weapon that the Covenant plan to use against humanity. Chief, having seen what the Covenant can do to colonies without the enigmatic ancient weapons, if he lets the Covenant find the Halo, his entire purpose for existing, to protect humanity, will be rendered null and void. He has to do whatever is necessary to understand what the artifact is, what it's trying to show him, and secure the weapon before the Covenant do. We find him trying to find a connection between the memories and visions he is seeing and real-world locations. Cortana helps narrow down the search when he remembers Mamor. He remembers losing Nora 098 during the battle. He remembers it but doesn't feel anything about it. He notes that when he touches the artifact, in spite of his implant pellet, he feels the memories as much as he remembers them. He realizes from this that he is missing a critical part of the context of his memories that could assist him in working out what it is the artifact is trying to show him. Feelings. Emotions. It is this and the need to ensure the darkness of the weapon doesn't fall into enemy hands, and the need to perform his duty to save humanity, which drives him to remove his hormone regulation pellet, contrary to protocol. His desire to ignore protocol when necessary for the greater good is something we've seen periodically throughout the Gold timeline. Halo 4 official protocol under first contact scenario is to return to Fleet Command and report the situation so a viable plan can be determined. Chief ignores this protocol and continues to remain on Requiem to deal with the Didact. It is because of this that he was able to stop the Didact before he composed the entirety of Earth. In Halo 5, he was given orders to return to Infinity because another team were tasked with fighting Cortana. Chief ignored these orders and chose to pursue Cortana himself, feeling responsible and knowing her the best, meaning he could get closer to her. She had already demonstrated she was comfortable to kill humans to raise the Guardians, so sending another team to stop her was basically guaranteeing their deaths. Chief going after her at least guaranteed he'd get close to her without being destroyed. So again, given these differences, but also these thematic similarities, Chief's actions in removing the pellet are founded in a desire to do his duty, to continue to protect humanity and to find out the artifact's secrets before his enemies. Immediately following removing his pellet, Chief goes out into the facility and beyond into the city. There, his senses begin to wake up. He can hear things he hadn't previously been able to. He feels emotions as a consequence of things he's seeing and experiencing. This is a knock-on effect of removing the pellet. His decision to defy protocol to better understand the artifact and save humanity from the darkness that he felt from it, and the Covenant gaining an impossible weapon, had the side effect of waking his senses up to the beauty of life. Where before he saw people playing games and didn't particularly understand the context, didn't feel anything in response, now he is seeing life for what it truly is. We see him musing on human interactions, people going about their lives, a young couple speaking on the train, grandparents seeing their grandchildren expressing love and affection, going to a live performance of music, the companionship between a dog and a human. He's a good doggo. But there is gravity and importance to this side effect. Chief removes his pellet to better understand the feelings and emotions related to the memories he was experiencing as a consequence of touching the artifact, so he can unlock the artifact's secrets, keep humanity from the darkness, and deny his enemies a weapon. He removed his chip to better serve humanity as their greatest warrior, their hero. And as a side effect, he has finally felt what it is to be human. He finally appreciated the human experience for what it is. The context the emotions gave his experiences made him love and want to cherish humanity and life in general in a much more visceral way than he ever had before. He finally understands what he is fighting for. It's difficult to be humanity's saviour if you feel nothing for humanity. He removed his pellet to learn more on the nature of the artifact and give context to the vision so he could save humanity, and humanity reached back and touched his soul. Made him feel and connect with humanity, further reinforcing his desire to protect us. The removal of his pellet pays off for the side effect and serves to strengthen his position as the Master Chief, the Spartan, the Protector. This awakening moment, motivated by his newfound empathy and compassion for humanity, then drives home the urgency to protect it, because his enemies aren't waiting and don't share his compassions. That leads him back to the artifact to have it speak to him again, now able to feel the entirety of the experience of the emotions and memories. And it's directly because of this that Chief learns that there is a second artifact, and that the planet he is on, in the memories, had ice rings that narrowed the search from over 100 worlds to just 3, and distinctly remembers burying something related to the 2 artifacts on the planet. The removal of his pellet pays off on the original intention, allowing him to further understand what it is trying to tell him. Next, comparison comes with Arandis 2. In the Silver timeline, it was uninhabited, save for an advanced program to develop a less inhabitable world through terraforming, cultivation, and advanced installations to expand the reach of human colonization efforts. The planet was only populated by UNSC biologists, botanists, and scientists working on this project, and their families. An unlicensed transport vessel brought a plague to the planet by all appearances, resulting in the quarantine and deaths of most of the population, save for the survivors who were evacuated, John included. John's parents were the leaders of the Arandis 2 colony, so John's discovery of the foreign artifacts may have actually been known to them, but kept quiet due to the significance of the find, thus motivating John's father to angrily bury John's drawings of the artifact, vying to put an end to this nonsense, possibly even as a way to protect John from something he perceived as a threat, or simply not knowing or understanding John's status as a reclaimer. This is hypothetical because it isn't elaborated on in Season 1, but I hope they do in Season 2 or onwards. In the Gold timeline, Arandis 2 was colonised in 2440 and was revered for its beautiful landscapes and higher learning centres. It remained mostly rural, however, a few large and powerful cities were established and became shining examples of the potential of outer colony worlds to thrive and still contribute to the UEG. Halsey suggests sending drones to data mine the planet for information, but Chief decides he has to see the planet for himself. By definition, Halsey is a civilian contractor, and while Spartans have something of a loyalty to Halsey, she isn't technically in their chain of command, and Chief is acting on an impulse to do what he can to save humanity from an unpleasant fate, which ultimately trumps any excuse she could make to the contrary. Her resistance and obvious concern is founded on the realization that she lied to the Spartans, John included, when they were conscripted, and John returning to his homeworld is bringing him impossibly close to the truth. Her insistence thereafter to go with him is probably then a misguided attempt to control the situation, play out as best she can. And that concludes Gold vs. Silver Episode 3. Tomorrow, Episode 4 goes live, so expect Episode 4's Gold vs. Silver to coincide with that. Thursday, expect a lore and theory video, and Friday, a most detailed breakdown. So under these pretense, where Chief felt the darkness from the artifact is trying to understand the visions and memories that he's seeing from the artifact so he can find out and secure the weapon from the Covenant that will inevitably bring about humanity's extinction, and knowing full well he's missing half of the context of his memories, do you think the decision that he made to go against protocol and remove the implant pellet was more in character than initially thought? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, commenting, liking and subscribing. I just want to give a quick shout out to my patrons and YouTube members: Spartan10148, my Metarch, Dylan, FalconX003, Kenwood, Irrefutable Justice, Leon, Neek and Ramiz, my monitors, Alvin, Andrew, Brand, Brian, Cameron, Chris, Darian, Devon, Flaming Halo, Greenblood, Kyle, Legions Lost, Michael, Prophet Bear, Spartan and Wolf, my sub-monitors, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, my diligent enforcers, and all the other awesome people that have jumped aboard to support the channel over at Patreon. Another shout out to Todd Morrison, my transcendent YouTube member. And just one quick reminder to support us on all major social media channels, including Discord. Much love from 00. Take it easy, everyone, and find peace in the domain.